Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It's been a wild last few days. I had to do stream in the morning, then sleep in the afternoon, then Baldur's Gate 3 in the evening, then live letter till like 2:30 in the morning, and and then I slept for 5 more hours, got up, streamed, did State of the Realm, went to the gym. And now I'm here. On top of all the Final Fantasy VII videos, it's been a busy time, and I'm more and more feeling tempted to make that separate Souls-like channel, because I've been doing Lies of P, I've been doing crowd control for Elden Ring, I'm planning on doing ones for Dark Souls 1 and 3, as well as Super Mario RPG, and I'm just in a very Souls-like, like FromSoft and Souls-like mood. And I just, man, I'm going to keep saying it, because if I keep saying it every week, eventually y'all are going to hold me to it. And letting you know it's on my mind reminds me it's on my mind, so it is what it is. But either way, yeah, I just wanted to do that quick little intro. Other than that, looks like we just have a handful of questions this week, about like 30-something comments total on the video, so I'm assuming there's a few comments on last week's topic, so factoring in, probably like 15 to 20 questions. So let's get to it. Thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon for supporting. They don't have to, they choose to. All my content is available for free here on YouTube, so be sure to enjoy it. And if you have a question for next week's episode, be sure to put it in the comment section of the video below. Anyway, with that, let's get into the Q&A, shall we? Before I even answer this first question, the very first comment was, I guess, something that didn't understand the sarcasm or the kind of fun, pokey nature of what I said last week. We were talking about defensive cooldowns for melees in last week's episode, and I poked fun at the fact that Dragoon essentially only has Life Surge. Obviously, it's not a defensive cooldown, but that's the joke. It's the only thing that they have, and thus really is like the worst end of the spectrum. It just straight up doesn't count. But yeah, that's actually a pretty common joke that we have amongst the endgame community, is whenever Dragoon talks about like wishing they had a defensive, we always say, oh man, you got Life Surge. That's going great for you. I do it to Whoops all the time, and he's like, no, it's not the same. Yeah, and then I think there was another thing that said about Keen Flurry. Yeah, I mean, parry rate was a thing, but honestly, like I mentioned last week, they probably need something more standardized, which is why if they were to remove the True North roll action, then I would prefer they replace it with some sort of like actual defensive. Now on to the actual question in front of us, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hope you're having a good day. I'll take that as a hello because it is a well wish. Thank you, and wishing the same to you. My question is, do you script your videos such as your recent 7 Rebirth videos? And if yes, what's the hardest part about writing the script? What do you consider the easiest part? It depends. Like, the answer is anywhere from completely winging it, because I really like to ad-lib even with scripted videos, to completely word for word saying everything that's on the script. And honestly, the hardest thing is, have you ever watched like a blooper for like a movie, and there's that one line that shows up in the blooper for like 45 seconds straight? A great example, Rush Hours 2, gefilte fish, that one. Stuff like that is the worst. There's always that like one line or one paragraph that even when reading it word for word is an absolute nightmare to actually say out loud. When just kind of going with your gut, even if you make a mistake, you usually just recover, except that maybe you stutter for a second and just move on. It makes for something that sounds a lot more natural. But then I have the nice little middle ground where sometimes I'll write bullet points and then kind of just imagine in my head what the right way to word said bullet point would be when I like fully express it. So it's somewhere in between like what you're experiencing now, which is a completely organic answer with no script to a question, to something that is completely pre-registered, pre-written, predetermined. And it just depends on the video and the topic and how I'm feeling about the recording on any given day. That can change what the easiest and hardest part is, but it's normally just not messing up my lines. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hi. With the wrap up of the story in 6.5 coming very soon, is it expected there will be a content drought next year up until Dawntrail? Yeah. That's every expansion, pretty much. There's usually about a 6-month time frame where, if anything, there's like some collaborations, or like they'll unlock the Savage tier, or maybe do some like last-second balance changes. But yeah, it's really just like a news trickle up until up from the final fan fest until the actual expansion. What we can expect is the Fall Guys collaboration, potentially a 14-16 collaboration, return of the 15 collaboration, wouldn't surprise me either. Any seasonal events that would occur during that time, I wouldn't be surprised if they throw the Gold Saucer one back out there again as well for the Make It Rain. I wouldn't even be surprised if Fall Guys kind of comes with the Make It Rain event for next year. And then yeah, and then that's kind of it. And then it's usually like one live letter that's like kind of in the middle of nowhere after the last fan fest. and then a live letter that goes over all the major job changes, usually something that's in line with a media tour, and then the full-on release, if not one last live letter before the full-on release. So that's kind of what's left in that 6-month time frame. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hi. As someone who has done only Stormblood Ultimates in Endwalker, hey, those are some of the better ones. I'm curious to know how the fights have changed since then, how the job design and stat squish and whatever else has impacted the experience. It's really just that you can kill them super quick. Like, there's no DPS check at all. Some jobs and the tools that they have are better suited to those fights, but also some are worse suited because a lot of jobs are not designed to be fully functioning at 70. So some jobs like Reaper, for example, are ultra boring, but also they perform perfectly fine. And then there's some jobs that just feel absolutely atrocious to play at 70 and others that feel really good. So that's been the big thing, is there's more of a disparity between how jobs feel, and that there's essentially no DPS checks at all unless you have an insane, and I mean insane, amount of deaths. Because Death Cobb is a thing, for example, you know, UCOB Stormblood Ultimate, where they try to die deliberately as many times as possible and still clear, and that is in the triple digits. I kid you not, over 100 deaths and still clearing UCOB. So as for mechs handled differently, no, because a lot of it still just insta kills you. Like, some better strats came out over time, but that's not really indicative of like job changes or expansion changes. That's just players, you know, figuring something out that's better. Hashtag Mr. Mad Mondays. Mad. Hey, Haps, how we doing? Mad. No. I'm wondering if 7.0 being a possible new starting point for new players, the best thing they could do for the game. Prior to that possibility, I personally advocated for a Realm Reborn to be reworked, if not in story, then at least in content structure and delivery, so it's more and more people. Funny thing, Heaven's Ward takes longer than a Realm Reborn now. I've tested it. It's not much longer. It's maybe like an hour or two, but if you sit through all the cutscenes and just beeline the story, Heaven's Ward should take on average about the same, if not a little bit longer than a Realm Reborn. So that doesn't really do anything to go back and do anything else to a Realm Reborn anymore, because it's just, you have 5 expansions worth of content to get through. They said 6.1, if anything, would be the new jumping in point. So they said they might have a system ready for a new jumping in point on 7.0's launch. They might not, but that's just a matter of waiting and seeing at this point. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi. Hi. Well wishes to you. You too. I'm sure you've answered something like this before. I've answered most of these questions before, but if I just said no to every question, wouldn't have much of a video. What do you personally think is a good starting point for jumping into content above the normal story content? Particularly, what do you think is the easiest extreme trial to start with? You always just go with whatever's most recent, because the disparity is not so great that it's worth considering that much, at least until you get to Ultimate. When you get to Ultimate, you usually don't want the Endwalker Ultimates as your jumping in point. You totally can. If you have a group that wants you to jump in on them, yeah, sure, go right ahead. But that's the only place I would say there's a disparity, is Ultimates, where you probably want to start with a Stormblood Ultimate. If you're feeling a little bit, you know, on the tougher side, you could start with T. But otherwise, whatever the most recent Extreme Trial is, most recent Unreal Trial, most recent Savage Tier, just go into that, because that's what everyone's practicing, that's what everyone's doing, and the difficulty disparity is not so severe that you should be considering going back and doing old stuff, because then you're gonna have trouble finding people. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, hi. Hope you're feeling swole these days. I just had chest day today, so I'm feeling pretty swole. I'm working on my big 3, my barbell press, my barbell squat, and my barbell deadlifts. And right now, I haven't done my max rep, but my total, so I've been doing less and less reps per set, but I've like from 5 and 5. So like last week I did 5 sets of 5 reps for all of those 3, like on the respective days. Now I'm doing 4 and 4, then 3 and 3, then 2 and 2, then 1 of 1, and that's going to be my max rep day. Right now I just finished the 5 of 5 week, the 5 sets of 5, and my total between squat, deadlift, and press is 645. That's 200 for press, 200 for squat, 245 for deadlift. And so I'm curious to see what the 1 max ends up making it. I think it would be kind of bold to assume it would get to 700, but that would be pretty nice. And then I can start that cycle again throughout the winter, and I can see what I can get it up to before eventually spring rolls around, and I kind of tone back on doing that a little bit more. It's been nice getting to eat a little bit more again and still get to, you know, actually work on stuff, but I'm still keeping it largely lean, largely clean, no dirty bulking or anything like that. Just eating more portions of the things that I was already eating so that I can fuel my body a little bit better, especially rice. especially carbs in general. That's been nice to kind of revisit. Anyway, on to the question. Two simple questions. I've picked up 8, 9, 10, and 12. Which would you recommend a playthrough of first? The only Final Fantasy games I have under my belt would be 7 Remake, 16, and 14 with a smidge of Crystal Chronicles. So that's tough. The PlayStation 1 era is not one I look back on too fondly because I feel like it's aged poorly. But for that reason, you should probably start with 8 or 9. And I think that's tough call because I would kind of want you to start with one I think you're more likely to finish, in which case I think it'd be 9 or 10. Well, I'm not a big fan of 9. I feel like a lot of people are more likely to kind of take to 9 and to finish it amongst the PS1 era. And 10, I think 10 is the easiest jumping in point. But then going back and playing the other stuff, it could be like, it's like playing Persona 5 if you've played that, and then trying to do the dungeons in 3 and 4 and how much less exciting those locations are, you know, after all this time. So I'm going to say 9, then 8, then 10, then 12. 12 is very different. So, you know, if you end up not being into that style of game, then playing it last kind of, it leaves it as a better jumping out point as opposed to the jumping off point. So that's going to be my order. 9, 8, 10, 12 is going to be the order I recommend there. Two, you're interested in Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Not that I'm not interested. I don't know anything about Grand Blue, and thus it's more so it's been brought to my attention repeatedly and is also releasing alongside like 6 other important games. So whether or not I'm interested in it may not matter. So I'm going to handle that when the time comes because I can't even think about the end of January into February right now with everything that's happening there. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Haps. Hi. Hope you're doing well. You too. I have 2 questions for you this week. Sure. 1, do you think Square Enix will ever change the ultimate formula? Have one ultimate in point 1 and the other in point 5? No, because that's exactly why we only had one ultimate in Shadowbringers. Because by the time they get to point 5, most of their efforts are going very, very deeply into the next expansion. So what happened was when we ran into the pandemic, you know, this little thing to get in the way, they had to can it. If it's ever aimed for 0.5 like it was in Shadowbringers, that's always a risk. Them just saying, you know what, we need to focus more on expansion-related stuff right now. Just save it till the next X1 patch. So no, I think it's better they come up with another activity. I think it's better they look at stuff like Valdecian once they've, you know, properly set up the rewards for Variant and Criterion. I think that can also make for a pretty good spot. And other activities in the 0.5 patches to hold people over versus an ultimate because it's too big of a risk at this point. It's a risk I'm not willing to take. And 2, so Dragoon Buddy is training with Zero. Are they really training so much as he was just doing sweaty push-ups and she asked if they should all disrobe? I don't recall them actually like training. No, he's Dragoon. He's literally like Nidhogg embodied. So yeah, no, he's also not a Scion. Keep in mind. Well, okay, let me rephrase. He's not an Archon. Most of the Scions are Archons, which don't have like a restriction of staying in one role. They just take on whatever combat arts they think will assist them the best. Estinian was raised as a Dragoon. He knows nothing but that, and I doubt that's going to change. Hashtag happy of the Mr. variety on Monday. Hey, Haps. Hi. Do you think we'll ever do more videos where we kind of brainstorm a new job and what you'd like to see in one? You've done that for Puppet Master. I always love hearing people's ideas. So more of those kind of things would be super welcome. Only if it really speaks to me. I prefer for them to give us a job and then I look at the history of Final Fantasy stuff and go, oh, well, you know, these are the types of things they did before. How could that translate into 14? Versus something completely original like Puppet Master, only because I feel like we all create a vision of a job and how it could work and, you know, why it should be in the game, etc., etc. And I feel like a lot of people really latch onto those ideas overmuch. And so if they either don't happen or they happen and they're not as they envisioned it, it really feeds into the... People get upset, irrationally upset. I don't. You know, I just acknowledge what I thought versus what reality is and I move on. But I'm always concerned with feeding into those types of people. Not that that should stop me from doing something, but very often I've had in the past, well, Mr. Happy said this, Mr. Happy said that. And I kind of take that into account whenever I'm speaking speculation nowadays, because some people have treated my word as authority in the past. I don't like that. I prefer people to think for themselves and for my opinion to not be authority over theirs. So I don't want people to hear and see my job idea, and then all of a sudden something comes out that's not like that. And there's this constant discussion about what I wanted versus what they wanted versus what I think should have happened, and like trying to compare, you know, apples and oranges kind of situation. It's just, it sucks all the fun out of it for me. So Puppet Master was one I was feeling passionate about, and if that happens again, sure. But otherwise, I'm not going to deliberately pursue speculating on brand new jobs and how they would work too much, because I prefer to just take what we get and then analyze it from there. Personally, I've got a ton of ideas for Dark Knight to make it more unique. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the thing. We make those ideas, that whether or not they happen, we've already created this like false expectation. That can be dangerous, and honestly, it can suck a little bit of the fun out of it just for us in particular. At least I've seen it happen a bunch of times. So yeah, that's why I don't try to dive too much into that space. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hope you're having a good one. You know what? I'll take that as a hello. I'm okay with those as hellos. Hello, and hope you're having a good one too. So I wanted to get your thoughts on something I noticed while doing a replay. In Stormblood, while unlocking the Auspice Trials, you assist Sorobon, who's a ninja turtle using Geomancer. Yeah. The more I think of it, the more good power. It would be a good power for either new class. As a caster, it would be a perfect power set to reintroduce Doc. So yeah, so funnily enough, these are the kind of things I don't like to comment on, because it's like, what can I say? Like, I can't validate someone's opinion that's based on nothing but speculation. There's not really any context for anything of the sort happening. But I also, if it's bad to shoot someone down on their idea, because it's not like I'm an authority either. So this is actually a perfect follow-up to the thing I just answered. This is the kind of thing I don't like to validate in any sort of way. People are free to think and feel and predict and speculate as much as they want. But this is what I avoid, is where I go, oh, I imagine it should be like this, and then I want like as many people to either just tell me what they think or agree. I just really want to share what's off the top of my mind. And my thoughts is, this is, you can want whatever you want. Is it likely? No. Especially no haste and slow. You're never going to see that again. I know you actually mean movement speed, but yeah, it's definitely not going to happen in that case. But yeah, so this is exactly the kind of thing I avoid. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Best part of my Is it Tuesday? Oh, you know what? Yeah, if you're in like Japan or Australia, it would be probably about Tuesday by the time I post this in the morning, or almost at the very least. Hey, hellos. Hi. Okay, I just can't help but think 6.x all the way till 6.5 could have been compressed into 3 patches only. Feel they are overly stretched even more. I think 6.5 and 6.55 only as a setup might be a very weak setup. I'm not going to lie, Endwalker's setup was pretty underwhelming, so I'm not too surprised. All the 0.5 patches have been kind of weird after 2.5x, because 2.5 and 2.55 were designed as 2 full patches. Everyone after that was a full patch split down the middle. So it feels very, very strange, and it has for quite some time. But no, I don't agree that it could be compressed into 3 patches. I mean, just looking at what happened. I mean, yeah, if you want the story to take longer, sure, but the amount of hours per MSQ per patch was pretty much equal across all of the patches from 6.1 and onward. So it's usually about 3 to 4 hours with cutscenes, with any wait times for like instances or stuff. So, and that's all standard. There's literally, there's no point in combining them just to get an 8-hour patch, an 8-hour MSQ out of a patch in an earlier one. So yeah, it's just, I don't feel it was any more overly stretched or less stretched than any other one that we've had before. As for the follow-up, do you think the story quality for 7.0 can suffer with such a short time setup? No, it doesn't matter. All that matters that happens when we're there. Who cares about the setup? What matters is what happens while we're there. You know, yeah, is a little bit of anticipation nice? Sure. But who cares about the anticipation if the story's bad when we get there? The anticipation could be fantastic and the story could be really lackluster, or the setup could be lackluster and the story could be fantastic. They're two completely non-important factors to each other. You know, it's just about anyone's personal feeling about wishing they could get more excited versus what the reality of the result ends up being. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, old haps. Hi. I've had my first, I just had a new first for me in 14 with 6 people all leaving at the start of an Alexander raid. Oh, of an alliance raid. You bet it was Loda. First time I've had a player or two leave, nor that uncommon to be frank, but this is a new record. Thanks for these to revamp the Crystal Tower into something more. I mean, you're barely going to see Crystal Tower anymore after the next patch, so I don't even think you need to worry about it because of the changes to the alliance raid queue. So I wouldn't even worry about it, to be honest. And I honestly, it barely even matters now. If people want to leave, they can leave. I mean, it'll fill again, and you could beat Crystal Tower with like 8 people, realistically, minus however much effort is taken to do stuff like the Atomo section and whatnot. So it doesn't even end up mattering. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, happy chap. Hello. First of all, loving all the content. Certainly helps me get through a long work week. Glad I'm able to do that for you. I've been doing MSQ rather slowly within a realm reborn. As of this comment, I'm a preferred server with the Smith Ring and Minfilius. Oh, okay, yeah, the collector stuff. Finding leveling being very fast, which it's insanely. If you're on a preferred world, you could have none of those things and out level. I got a job to 60 and another job to 50 without making any progress in Heaven's Ward and without doing any side dungeons, without doing any extra roulettes. I just blasted through, and that was on a free trial account without any of the other bonuses. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I was wondering what your opinion on it was, because it's slow and tedious to a degree, but I also don't like the feeling of being over leveled when the enjoyment of challenges gets ripped away. None of it's challenging. Literally nothing you're doing during the MSQ is challenging, regardless of how leveled you are. So none of it is. That feeling doesn't exist at all. So I wouldn't worry about it if that's the particular element. For me, I just like to stay ahead of the MSQ. It doesn't matter to me if it's EXP wasted or not. Leveling in this game's super easy anyway, so it just doesn't matter to me. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, hi, and hope you're having a good one, at least a decent one. It's a pretty good one. 2 questions, one sort of facetious, silly, the other more serious. Okay, I can do with some facetiousness. Silly first, is it just me or is there a rash of ninja using single? Dude, I don't know what is going on with ninjas doing single target dotons, man. It drives me up a freaking wall. I've seen so much more of it myself too. And it's the STDs that come out of them. It's like, do I need to make another PSA not to do it? Like, especially when you're doing like level 50 content. Because what happened before is it was like a bunch of people who don't play 14 not understanding how dot ticks worked. And that stopped for a little bit, and it seems to have started again, because I've seen it a lot more too, and it's driving me up an absolute wall. Second, more serious question. Last week you talked a bit about which Shadowbringers raids might be soloable now, but you didn't mention anything about the Shadowbringers EX trials. Which of those do you think might be soloable now once we get to level 100? Yeah, I didn't even think about the EX trials. I'd have to think about it more in depth, because I honestly don't remember what was so dangerous about a lot of them that would make it that bad. Like, I can't think of anything in Emerald that is not doable. Ruby, I guess Ruby, if you get both of the split damage AoEs, that would kill you. So you would have a hard lock on beating it before the second one. That would be the Ruby Claws, where you have to get close, and then it targets both the healers. And I think it targets both the healers. Again, no, then it's the spreads afterwards. That's right. If more than one spread goes out, it really depends on if that will only target one person or multiple people, if there's only one person around. So that's like a big unknown. But then the ads in the second phase, you got to keep them separate, or you got to murder one immediately. So that one might actually take quite a bit longer before that one's even possible. And then what else is there? The meteors. Meteors, I think you could sprint around the arena in Ruby Weapon. Titania. Does Titania have anything? Because you can basically solo. It might be. I don't know if the ad phase is going to get you screwed there. I think it does. And then there's Innocence. Innocence is. I don't think the ad phase is a problem on Innocence. I don't remember anything that's a problem on Innocence other than maybe Tank Buster stuff. I don't feel like I don't remember them all well enough. Diamond. No, Flood Ray won't do anything to you. So there's got to be something else there that gets you, but I don't remember what. And then who else is there? There's what's his face, Memoria Mazera, which, yeah, honestly, I don't remember them well enough, I think is the problem. I'm trying to remember what mechanics are really require multiple people to be alive, or it's an instant wipe. And I'm having trouble thinking of which ones may interact by just stacking it up a bunch. So I'm gonna need to revisit that and actually just take a look. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Haps and viewers. I hope you're all well. Same to you. A thought occurred to me, the biggest problem with how Cleric Stance functioned back then was it was a heavy trade-off. Now I think Cleric Stance can still come back without hindering the overall gameplay. What I imagine would be Cleric Stance gets baked into each healer in their own unique way to reward good play and forethought. For example, if Cleric Stance was a flat damage buff the healers, but the cooldown gets reduced whenever you use a job's core healing kit, but it also decreases the duration of Cleric Stance if you heal while the buff is active. No, because then all that happens is you have literally perfect budget heals between 2-minute windows, because you need to ensure you have a Cleric Stance for every 2-minute window. Well, yeah, no matter what, it would be an increase to have it. Well, here's the thing. It wouldn't even be an increase to have it. It'd be an increase if they made no other potency changes. But they would potency change everything to factor in for the fact that you have Cleric Stance, which means if you're playing with it incorrectly, you're just doing less damage than you are now. So that becomes the problem. No matter what, if you try to add that in, you have to lower the potencies of what's there now because they want the damage that's there now. Now, obviously, that gets rebalanced per expansion, but the point is your overall percentage contribution still needs to remain about the same. They don't want you to just have more damage by adding Cleric Stance back into the game. So all it does is make it so some healers can be worse, which at this point, I don't think anyone really cares about that much. Like, healers want more skill expression, but literally just managing Cleric Stance being the difference between being dead weight and not being dead weight. I don't think any. I think most of the people now who like PF and shit, they just want to make sure that their healers can't grief any more than they already do because they grief quite a bit a lot of the time. It's, all this would do is make it so they can grief even more. But some of the hardcore healers probably like some form of skill expression with this. Sure. Do I think it's a good idea? No. Hashtag random days with Mr. Happy. Hi. How are you and the cats doing? They're doing fine. They're taking a nap. First time asker, welcome. Why is a boss being stationary such a disadvantage? Maybe my lack of experience as a raider speaks loudly, but clearly it's not that huge of a disadvantage seeing as you rank P10 so high. So you immediately lose gameplay elements that if the design of the boss does not make up for said gameplay elements, it's just more boring by default. That's just how it ends up being without a shadow of a doubt. So basically, P10S is a very arena movement focused fight. So even though the boss is standing still, everyone in the party is constantly shifting around and moving, and it's making fantastic use of the space. There are other bosses where essentially the back of the room is a null and void. It's like a complete waste of space to even have a back of the room because you're never going to play to it, which means you only end up playing to about the front half of the arena, which means you basically just sit there and beat ass the entire time, and it gets so incredibly boring. This has been true of the Manipulator. It's been true of things like P8S, for example, in Phase 2. It's been true of stuff like Leviathan, although there are some parts that do manage to shake that up, but even the player base figures out a way to just stay in melee range the whole time, and it reduces a lot of the interaction with the fight itself. So yeah, there's all sorts of issues that come with it. It's way more pendulum-y. Like it can swing to one side and be just an awful fight where there's no tank positioning mechanics, there's barely any movement at all, and then you have the other side where they do everything and throw the kitchen sink at you like P10S, and it's a lot of fun. All right, this one's quite long, and it seems to deal with a lot with damage over time related stuff and some other related stuff as well. It's a lot of text. Let's see. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Good day to you, sir. Lolly ho. Hello. Related to your dot question last week, you mentioned them removing a lot, but why do you think they kept some like Gunbreaker and Paladin? I think because they don't consider those hindrances to those jobs. They consider them well enough functioning and something to manage as a semi-frequent cooldown. Do they need them? Probably not. They could definitely do away with them, but they also don't harm. They don't harm or hinder the job's overall performance by that large of a degree. And some of them are, at least with Circle of Scorn, is almost synonymous with the job at this point. Like now, it's survived to the point where it not being there would be kind of weird. But I don't think that's a reason necessarily to keep it. Aside from the healer damage buttons, I did a deep dive analysis on healer. White Mage has as many damage buttons now as it did in Stormblood. Arrow 3 is basically replaced with Misery, and Solace Rapture giving a similar non-glare rotation per minute as Stone's non-stone. And Ass had the same number from Stormblood to Shadowbringers as well. Objectively speaking, the difference is we GCD heal less because of all of our OGCD healing now. Yes, that's pretty much on point. Scholar lost about half of its damage buttons. Astro and White Mage didn't, so it's a weird combination of rose-tinted glasses of people not basing their complaints on history on actual facts. I think you're misinterpreting the volume of buttons versus the frequency of use and applicable use of said buttons. Arrow 3, Arrow 2, and Arrow 1, when we had all three of them, there was a large amount of dot management that needed to happen alongside of your healing GCDs. So while yes, obviously having more healing OGCDs removes the amount of healing GCDs that need to be factored into that, they were already trying to cut out as many GCDs as possible back then. You may have Misery, but Misery itself is a button you'll press once every minute. Arrow 3 is something you're going to press 2, maybe 3 times a minute. I forgot how long it was. I think it was a 24-second dot or something of that capacity. And so how often you use these skills, how important the management of those skills are, feels more engaging. It's not just about the volume of buttons that you have, and that definitely factors into how people feel playing any individual job. Astro, another example, is the Lord, having the Lady or the Lord going a full fight pulling nothing but ladies and wishing you had pulled lords, when ladies are largely considered to be non-essential for any sort of healing requirement that you would plan for. You know, that obviously has its negative feelings as well, and that's not something they dealt with as much. They used to just deal with their actual bad card draws. Now they get this one card draw every minute, and it's the difference between getting an extra nuke every minute or not, and that can be really, really swingy in terms of how the job feels to play. So it's not just about the number of buttons. There's not rose-tinted glasses. It's how you actually manage and apply the use of said buttons. But you were spot on in that the frequency of OGCD healing has increased so much that there is a lot less management of those healing GCDs, which is a factor. And if they want to increase the involvement of healing as a role, they would do away with some of the OGCD heals. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy. Hi. First time asking? Welcome. If you don't mind, I'll be asking you a few. Well, that's what the Q&A is for. Do you remember we going to get 14, something like 2.0 dummy that makes areas in the ground? Something. I don't know what you just asked me. I think what you asked me is a training dummy that uses mechanics against you, and they had spitballed the idea once and said they couldn't promise anything, and then we never got it. So if that's what you're referring to, there you go. I don't remember you playing some Heroes games like Marvel or DC. Anyway, you plan to play Spider-Man 2? I want to, but odds are time won't allow it. I have played some of them, but not as of late. I see something in the image of the presentation of Dawn Show where they talk about tribe quests. One fellow, I believe we didn't have the tribe, was Beck Luke. Yes, we did. We had, that was the Numo. We had them. Oh, you're talking about versus the presentation. No, the one that we didn't have in the presentation but did have in game was the Qatari. We never saw or heard about the Qatari until the patch they were introduced was rolled around. But no, we definitely had the Numo. The Numo and the Pixies are two of the tribal quests we had in Shadowbringers. I have a few more, but I wait for you to answer me on these ones. Have a good day. Well, hopefully they were the right answers or answered the questions correctly. This one doesn't have a hashtag, but it seems to be a question. In drawn... Off to a good start. Well, they completely changed the character design when first logging in and start the game. I mean, they already have examples of how they're going to look. Like when we get the graphics update, it's just going to be very similar graphic style, but updated reflections, updated textures, all that kind of stuff. Like in you will get nothing even remotely close to Lost Ark's character design, which I'm not going to lie, look, like most Korean MMOs, absolutely absurd. Give it more sex appeal. No. What you're asking is not happening. Thought about replaying the entire series from the beginning, like throwing away everything we have completed up to Endwalker and starting over. I don't know what the last part said, but I'm even more confused after reading all that. So I'm going to move on. All right, it looks like that was the last, real question. There was another comment about Life Surge down here, and somebody who did get the joke did indeed point out that, yes, the whole joke is that Life Surge is not a real defensive. Yes, somebody caught it. Have you tried sleeping? I get a good amount of sleep per night. I get usually 6-ish hours, sometimes a little more. Dude, I slept so much the other day. I slept for about the 6 hours, then I streamed for 4, then I slept for 4 more, then I streamed for 8, and then I slept for 6. That was a hell of a schedule to meet for that the other day. And then someone disagreeing with how the devs view streamer representation. Listen, I have far more experience with this than you do. So I'm telling you, they don't care about a streamer in particular's opinion. What they do is if a streamer, or not even a streamer, if the community at large, I should say, and multiple streamers and multiple content creators and YouTube video makers and all that, all hit on a point, they will use those as feedback points. They say, okay, there's a lot of people talking about this. These people have made points for us to look at. Let's look at the comments down below. So they don't just look at the topic. They look at how people respond to said topic. Remember, you said damage should not be representative of the difficulty of a job, and streamers disagree, but viewers agreed? What you've just said didn't happen. Because streamers didn't. Okay, let me read this fully, make sure I'm not skipping a word because I do that. When Yoshi said damage should not be representative of the difficulty of a job, he did say that they design it around the difficulty of a job. He said they do that. Streamers said they shouldn't do that, and viewers agreed with streamers. So you've got the whole situation wrong. But the point is, They don't just look at what a streamer or a YouTube content creator says. It doesn't matter if you disagree. You're factually wrong. You didn't even remember the situation correctly. So you're just factually incorrect about your assessment of what I'm telling you. And then what else? Somebody asking why the Bloodfest icon still has 2 cartridges. Probably because they just didn't want to change it to have 3. So I'd imagine that's all it is. And was there anything else? Somebody saying they have really hard time getting queues for Crystalline Conflict, even though they're Plat 1, so they could just, you know, run into issues. They wish that there were better rewards so people felt like PvPing for more of the season. And I think that might be it. Yeah, and then there's the defensive cooldown stuff. And then blue mages are damage over time. You know what? You're really not wrong, because that's exactly what it is. Blue mage is the most dot-heavy job in the game right now, and it's nuts. But anyway, yeah, that's going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Thank you for asking your questions. Again, if you have one, put it in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned, because we got all the patch-related content hitting the YouTube channel over the next several weeks. With that, I will see all of you in the next one. And until then, take care.